Hey, good morning, sir. My name is Ivan Wong. I am the leader of Group, and my members are Shan, Carlson and Sheila Chong. So today we will be entertaining and presenting our database group assignment. So to kick things off, I will have Carlson explain the EERD that we have created in our database. So Carlson, please.
All right, thank you, Ivan. So, this is our EERD that is based on the case study. So, as you can see here, this is kind of blurry, so we're going to switch to a more high resolution one here. So, I'll attempt to make a story out of it. I hope it will be clear. So, according to the case study, right, the hospital first needs to have staff. All right. So, the staff, and they gave some attributes. So, we listed down all the attributes and think that what is required. And they also specified that a few of them have different specializations. So we decided to use the ability of EERD to do some specialization here. And because they only have one position at one time, so we separate that into four, which is senior nurse, charge nurse, doctor, and junior nurse. Okay, so for all of the staff, right, they are going to work in wards. So that's why this is this relation here is many to many. Okay. And then afterwards, we'll move towards patient. So the next thing they provided is patient. They also give a set of attributes we have listed here. And the patient also have something called a next of kin. And the next of kin essentially is something, what happens if one of the patient like pass away or something happens to the main patient, the original patient. So the next of kin will be responsible for all of like the future actions that will happen. All right, so one patient can have like more than one next of kin because that makes sense. And if there are multiple next of kin, if one cannot be contacted, you can contact the next one. So it's something like a backup or redundancy. All right. So for the patient, right, to get into the hospital, they first have to attend an appointment, which is here. So this appointment, right, the patient will be given a few attributes. So we mark down the date, time, the room number, the reason, and the outcome. So for the appointment, it's not only just the patient who like goes in, sits down there and like look at the wall. You'll need some staff for like to attend it. So what we have here is the staff that also joins the appointment. So after we have both of those and we have taken down of those, the appointment can commence, and they will come out with something called an outcome. So the outcome, right, is either inpatient or outpatient. So if it's inpatient, right, then we will send them to the waiting list and we'll mark down the admission date. So when they get into the waiting list and which ward is it waiting for. If it's not, right, then it will go into the outpatient, which will get in that in a while. So after the patient is in the waiting list, he'll be waiting for a while for a ward, and eventually he'll be get assigned to a ward. Then this placed in here will become into play. So what this essentially does is the patient is get placed inside a ward, and we'll mark down all of this: admit date, discharge date, expected date, and bed UID. We use admit date as a primary key because one patient can enter multiple wards at one day. So because admit date, there's time inside also. So by the second, so you can't like copy and it won't repeat itself. All right. So if it successfully gets into the ward also can use something called medication. So the medication here, right, we have defined some attributes for it like unit cost, reorder level, dosage, quantity, method, description, and most importantly, the medication ID which will be the primary key. And the ward ID, the ward, right, will use the medication and will take the date of when it takes and the count that it will takes. All right, so what happens if the patient didn't go into the hospital, like he didn't get admitted, instead he's suggested to go outpatient and to take medicine instead. So here, right, the appointment directly uses the medication. So only an appointment can take the medication. And for this, we also take down some important values like start date, count, finish date, and description for it, along with the medication ID and appointment ID. And lastly, we have supplier, which obviously supplies medication for the hospital. It's a many-to-many relationship because one medicine can buy from different suppliers, and sometimes they can give better values and better prices. So that's why we did it. And the supplier number here is the primary key, as the case study has alluded to. So next, right, for the relational table, I'll pass it on to Shan.
Okay, thank you, Carlson. Next is UNF relational mapping. This is based on the EERD we make above. We are using all in one condition because we have a disjoint in the staff table, which are doctor, senior, junior, and charge. the subclass of the staff. And there are 13 tables here. 7 tables are based on the entities in the EERD, and 6 tables are the many-to-many relationship. And after the UNF relational mapping, we have our normalization. So the first part is the functional dependency. And based on this functional dependency, we have our 1NF, 2NF, and 3NF. After the normalization, the staff tables is separate to 4, which are staff base, staff experience, staff qualification, and contract type. This is because staff experience, the staff date, and finish date and position are different of each staff, so we did not put organization as a key to connect it with the staff base together, and same goes with the staff qualification and contract type. And for the patient, we separate to patient and next of kin after normalization. We have a new relational mapping that based on our 3 and F. And this is our new relational mapping after we create our 3 and F. And this is different from the U and F relational mapping, and we create our table based on this table. Thank you. And next we'll have Sheila explain the create table.
Okay, thanks, Huisan. Now I will talk about the table that have in our workbench. So we got 16 table in it. Here the left hand side, 16 table in it. So the first, allocate. So the allocate is for the staff, showing that the staff working and allocated which what. Like for example, like the staff ID is for the 48. So he was working is in the 10021. Then appointment. Appointment is showing that the patient making appointment with the doctor. So so inside got the appointment ID, patient ID, staff ID, the date time, room number, they checking the reason why they make an appointment, and also the outcome. And why the outcome got the inpatient and the outpatient is the reason is like after a doctor examine the patient, they will need to think that the patient needed to stay overnight or not. If no, then it will become an outpatient. If yes, then it will become the inpatient outcome. So this appointment table. Then is the medication table. Medication table is showing that the medicine's name, their ID, their description, how dosage they need to use, and how the method, and also the how the amount of the medicines. So like say the first one, med ID number 1, med names is this, and the description is this, and the dosage is the 1 injection, method is injection, and quantity. This quantity is not like giving 500 of the med ID. It's just as one med and 500 mg of it only, not 500 bit. So this is the medication. And then is the patient. Patient table is to collect the patient their name, their information, their name, address, their date of birth, gender, and their matures, like they married or single, also their phone number. Here got almost 50 patients in the hospital in database. And then is the staff contract. So staff contract showing that the staff ID, their big number, hours work, contract type, and the payment type. Like the staff ID of the number 40, the big number is 1, the hour works is 20, and their contract and his contract type is permanent, and his permanent type is monthly. But the staff ID of the 17 is weekly. This is reference. And then is the staff experience table showing the staff ID organization, start dates, end dates, and their positions now. Like the staff ID 48, now position is CO. And the staff qualify is showing that the same thing, staff ID again. and then qualified type, their degree, diploma, and the date of qualify, and also the institution name, like Nottingham or Survey. Then is the staff base. It's collect the showing out the all staff member, like the doctor, the nurse, their information. So like the staff name, staff address, their telephone number, their date of birth, gender, NIN, current salary, salary skill, and it goes on. So got almost 50 staff in it. Okay, then is the treatment table. Treatment table show the appointment ID. This appointment ID is the appointment ID. So it's here. So here show the appointment ID that the patient make an appointment, and the patient use the medication, like, and also the description. They take the medic, take daily once for the night, like that. And the count they take on the start date and the finish date they finish the medicine. Then is the waiting list table. Here shows the appointment ID, ward ID, and the admission date. So this waiting list that waiting for the appointment, the patient. Then is the ward. Ward here show the ward ID, the ward name, the location, the number of beds, and like that. So for example, for the ward ID of 1001, the ward name is ICU. The location is the in level 1. And then the number of beds in the ICU got 24, and the EXT number, so for the calling one, is the 1234. The staff ID that looking there, locate there is the staff ID, the number 20. Then is the what med allocate. What med allocate, the what ID, med ID, date time, and count. So in this what ID, like 1002, they're using the med ID of the 1. And then the date time they use, and also how many they use it. So here got 5 of it. Then is the lastly is the what usage. What usage showing the what ID, patient ID, admit date, bed UID, expected date, and the discharge date. So like example, the second line, the what ID of the 1001, patient ID, his admit date is 2021 March and 10, and the bed UID his day is 30. The expected date is 2021 March 11, and discharge date is on 2021 March 10. So that's all my part. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. So I'll be explaining about the queries. So I will explain them numerically. So I will go from question 1 to question 8. Okay, so for question 1, it wants a list of patient ID who is on the waiting list for a ward. So we just selected the relevant details, and we have some inner joins. So for example, we inner join the patient ID from the patient table to the patient ID in the appointment table to make sure that the patient has an appointment. So for question 2, it wants to display the total number of beds occupied by inpatients in at least 3 wards, which means that the patients have to stay overnight. And then the questions desire also the ward ID and the ward name. So we use the count function to count the occupied beds in the ward ID. And we use the what usage discharge date is null, because if the discharge date is not null, that means the patient is not an inpatient. So for question 3, it's almost the same as question 2. It's almost the same as question 2, but it wants a total number of vacant beds. So as you can see, we use the number of beds in the ward to deduct the ward ID from ward usage as vacant bed. So that's the difference between question 2 and question 3. Okay. So for question 4, it wants a list of all male patients whose age are between 30 and 40. So the list has to be ordered in ascending order. So we just selected the patient details, and we use the current date function to calculate the patient's age. And we use where their age is between 30 and 40. And as you can see, we use the patient gender equals to M, because that's the male gender in our table. For question 5, so it wants a list of number of patients handled by doctors who has names starting with A and J. So we selected the relevant information for the staff, and as you can see, we counted the patient ID because it wants a list of number of patients. That's why we counted it. And as you can see, we use the where current position of staff base is doctor because the patient has to be handled by a doctor. And the staff name is like J or like A because the name has to start with A and J. So for question 6, it wants a list of medication information and its quantities prescribed to a particular patient. So the retrieved list should consist of medication ID, medication name, total quantity prescribed, and the number of patients counted. So we just selected the relevant information here, and we interjoin the treatment. So for example, the medication ID and medication has to be interjoined with the medication ID and treatment to make sure that it's used in treatment. And as you can see here, we selected blank columns here as a placeholder for the total. So as you can see, there are blank columns in the bottom of the table to satisfy the total. Yeah, so that's the total amount of patient ID. Okay, so for question 7, it wants the list of information of medication appointment booked by a patient. So they want the retrieved information to consist of a patient ID, patient name, phone number, reason of appointment, doctor ID, doctor name, location, time and date. So we just selected all the information there and we interjoin. So for example, we interjoin the staff base. So the staff ID from staff base has to be interjoined with the staff ID and appointment to make sure that the staff has an appointment. Okay, so for the last question, it wants the list to find the number of doctors who have appointments with more than 3 patients in a week, and it wants us to display the doctor ID, doctor name, patient ID, patient name, and the number of patients booked that booked the appointment. So again, we just selected the relevant information and we interjoin again. So we interjoin the staff ID and staff base to the staff ID and appointment to make sure that the staff has an appointment, and also same the patient. So we just interjoin together to make sure that the patient has an appointment. And as you see, we use the having count staff IDs more than 3. This is to satisfy the more than 3 patients that is listed in the question. And this is also has selected the blank columns to satisfy, as a placeholder for the total. So as you can see, this is at the bottom of the table. We have blank columns here. This is source to put the total number of patient name. Yeah. So there are four different patients. Okay, so that's it for all the queries. Hi, my name is Ivan. I'm the group leader for Group B, and my contributions are I did some of the data dictionary, some of the EERD, the insert statements, and I did some of the queries. So I learned a lot from doing this assignment. Initially, the challenge faced to me was very tough because I didn't really understand EERD, but after doing the assignment, I've learned new things like generalization and superclasses. So the difficulties I faced, one of the difficulties I faced were I was actually generating the data manually. So like for example, I had to type out 50 names, which was very challenging for me. But my group mate, Carlson helped me by using a dummy data generator. So it really helped me a lot. Next, I'll give it to Shan.
Okay, hi, my name is Shan. In this report, I contribute the most part for relational schema and normalization for report 1. And for report 2, I did is the query 3 and 4. And the difficulty I face is I realize the tables we create during the relational schema, but need to change when we insert the data. One part has problem, then need to start from the top. And what I learned from this assignment is cooperate with group meet is very important. That's all from me. Thank you.
Alright, my name is Carlson, and what I did to this assignment is, as Ivan has said, I helped in generating the mock data, I helped in doing the create statements for the database, I did most of the EERD and part of the relational schema. So what difficulties I faced in this assignment is, I've understand that how that the hospital system works and what systems are there supposed to be inside a database, such as a waiting list, how do you manage a ward usage system. So the most difficult part for me is actually how to transfer data between tables, because the data has to be consistent and the integrity has to be always maintained as how it's supposed to be. So I overcome it by actually looking at examples online and learning from the previous slides and the previous assignments that you have gave us. So that's all for me. Thank you.
Okay, hi, I'm Sheila. I'm Sheila Chong. And what I've done with others members in this project is the data dictionary that we need to key in the database. And so the EERD relationship in diagram to link all the entities like one to many, many to many, and also the description of the EERD. And the project tool I did is the query of the question 6 and 8. And what I faced the problem of this project is that I misunderstand about the question asked when the question 6 of the 8, and I need to do again the query part again, and so search on online to figure out how to solve it. So asking other team members like Carlson, our leader Ivan, and also Shan about the query part. And also I have learned a lot of things in this project, how we build out the database together and looking to it. So that's all.
All right. Thank you for listening to our presentation. Bye.
Right. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Okay.